Good morning, everyone, on this wonderful day on the 2nd of September 2023. Yesterday, as South Africans, we had a nice celebration of Spring Day. I hope at least there were some people that got some nice flowers and it felt like spring to them and not too cold. So anyway, this morning, I don't often do this, but this morning something just struck me as I am reading through 1 Corinthians and specifically chapter 10. Just to give some background, it's the author is the Apostle Paul, and he is a very prominent person in the history of in the history of Christianity, and most of the New Testament has been written by him and the disciples of Jesus, the Gospels. But the Apostle Paul says, he talks about the people in Egypt, the Israelites in Egypt, and how God delivered them from Pharaoh, and obviously they were in the wilderness. And then he talks about them being very rebellious. And actually in the end, God sent serpents to bite the people, and many of them died. And then Paul mentions this in his explanation about not encouraging people. So he was writing to the Corinthian church, and he's encouraging them to watch out that rebellion doesn't creep into their hearts, because that causes all sorts of problems for them. And interesting, he mentions, and he says, don't be rebellious as some of them were, as they were rebellious against Christ in the wilderness, and that made them to die. And it just struck me that the Apostle Paul was totally convinced that it was Christ in the wilderness, even that time, years before the Christ was actually in human form, born as a baby and walked the earth. Paul himself has the sense of Christ being there and Christ being God. I mean, there is no way for Christ being able to be born as a man and walk this earth for 33 years until his crucifixion, and then being resurrected from the dead, and of course ascending into heaven. There's no way of making reference to him as the Christ. Just remember Paul, I mean, he was well educated in the Roman law and Jewish law, Jewish customs, Jewish traditions, and in the Pentateuch and the Torah and all of that. And yet he refers to Christ as actually the one being there when the people rebelled in the desert. And that was hundreds or thousands of years before that. And it just struck me again as evidence. Some people don't believe that Christ is God. They don't believe in his resurrection. But the fact that Paul makes mention of him in the context of the Israelites being rebellious, and they were being rebellious towards Christ, the only way that he could say that is if he was 100% convinced that Christ is God. Otherwise, how was it possible for him to even transcend time? We're talking about hundreds or thousands of years between the time of the Israelites being in the desert on the way to the promised land, and by the time that Jesus was actually born as a human through the Virgin Mary. So anyway, I just thought to share that. To me, this is one of the reasons why I am a believer and I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus and his death and his resurrection, because there's also scientific evidence for that, and that just struck me again today. Anyway, take care. Have a wonderful day.